From the icy plains of Pluto to the scorching heat of Mercury, our solar system is full of wonders that continue to surprise us. Now we have set foot on Mars and beyond, with rovers exploring the mysteries of our cosmic backyard. Welcome to my channel. And today let's take a journey beyond our pale blue dot and explore the fascinating worlds that orbit our sun. Let's get started. First up, we have Mercury, the smallest planet in the solar system. Named after the Roman messenger god, Mercury is a tiny planet that packs a punch. It's just 4,880 kilometers wide, which is less than 1/10 the width of Earth. But don't let its size fool you. Mercury has a solid core and is incredibly dense. In fact, it's the densest planet in the solar system. Despite being so small, Mercury has a whopping 30 million volcanoes, more than any other planet in the solar system. But don't worry, they're all inactive now. Mercury also has strange cliffs called scarps that are up to 2 kilometers high. They formed when the planet cooled and shrunk, leaving these massive cracks behind. Now, because Mercury is so close to the sun, it experiences extreme temperatures. The side facing the sun can reach up to 427 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead. On the other hand, the night side can get as cold as negative 180 degrees Celsius. That's a huge temperature difference, but it's nothing compared to Venus. Venus is Earth's twin in terms of size and mass, but it's a very different planet in many other ways. Its atmosphere is incredibly thick and is mostly made up of carbon dioxide, which traps heat and makes Venus the hottest planet in the solar system. The average surface temperature on Venus is about 370 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt rock. The pressure on Venus is also extremely high, about 90 times that of Earth. That's equivalent to being 900 meters underwater on Earth. But despite these harsh conditions, there may still be life on Venus. Scientists believe that there could be microbes living in the upper atmosphere, where the temperatures and pressures are more similar to Earth. Venus is also shrouded in thick clouds that reflect sunlight and make it appear brighter than any other planet in the sky. In fact, Venus is the brightest speck in the sky after the sun and the moon. It can even be seen during the day if you know where to look. Venus rotates very slowly and in the opposite direction to most planets, which creates super slow winds that blow at just 4 kilometers per hour. These winds have been blowing in the same direction for billions of years. Earth is our home planet, the only known planet to support life. Earth is the third planet from the sun, and it's the perfect distance away from the sun to support life. Not too hot, not too cold. The atmosphere on Earth is mostly made up of nitrogen and oxygen, which allows for liquid water to exist on the surface. Earth also has a strong magnetic field that protects it from harmful solar radiation. All of these factors have allowed life to flourish on Earth. We've explored Earth's surface extensively, including the deepest trenches in the oceans and the highest mountains on land. But we still have much to learn about our planet. There's still a lot of the ocean that we haven't mapped, and there's always more to discover about the Earth's core and mantle. With new technologies, we're able to study Earth like never before, and we're constantly learning more about how our planet works. Next up is Mars, the red planet. Mars is a cold desert planet with a thin atmosphere. It's about half the size of Earth and has a surface area that is a quarter of Earth's. Mars has 2 moons, Phobos and Deimos, which are much smaller than Earth's moon. Mars is named after the Roman god of war. It has a reddish appearance due to the presence of iron oxide, which is also known as rust. Mars has giant volcanoes, canyons, craters, polar ice caps, and evidence that it was more active geologically in the past. Scientists think that Mars may have had a lot more water in the past, and that it could have supported life. NASA's Curiosity rover has found organic molecules on Mars, which is a sign that life may have existed there. Mars is the 4th planet from the sun, and it's the 2nd smallest planet in the solar system. It's a cold planet with an average surface temperature of minus 63 degrees Celsius. The atmosphere of Mars is very thin, which means that there's little to no wind on the planet. This makes it difficult for sound to travel, and it would be very hard to hear anything on Mars. Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system. It's so massive that all the other planets combined weigh less than Jupiter. It's about 11 times wider than Earth. Jupiter has a giant red spot. It's actually a massive storm that's been raging for centuries. The storm is so big that Earth could fit inside it with room to spare. Jupiter also has dozens of known rings that are intermediate in complexity, halfway between the more extensive set around Saturn and the simpler rings found around Mercury, Neptune, and Saturn. Jupiter is a gas giant, meaning that it doesn't have a solid surface. Instead, it's mostly made up of gases such as hydrogen and helium. Jupiter has a very faint ring system that is intermediate in complexity, halfway between the more extensive rings of Saturn and the simpler rings of Mercury, Neptune, and Saturn. Jupiter has more than 75 known rings. They are intermediate in complexity, halfway between the more extensive rings of Saturn and the simpler rings of Mercury, Neptune, and Saturn. The majority of Jupiter's rings are opaque and only a few miles wide. Saturn is the sixth planet from the Sun. It's famous for its beautiful rings that are visible even through a small telescope. Saturn is another gas giant, mostly made up of hydrogen and helium. It's the second largest planet in the solar system, but it's less massive than Jupiter. In fact, Saturn is so light that if you removed its rings, it would float in space. Saturn also has a lot of moons. In fact, it has more moons than any other planet in the solar system except for Jupiter. Some of Saturn's moons are very interesting. For example, Titan is the only moon in the solar system that has a thick atmosphere. Another moon, Enceladus, has a subsurface ocean that may contain more water than all the water on Earth. Saturn is about 9.5 times the size of Earth. It's so massive that it can fit 750,000 Earths inside of it. Saturn is also very far away from Earth. It takes about 8 years for light to travel from Saturn to Earth. This means that if you were to send a message to Saturn, it would take over 17 hours to get a response. Uranus is a sideways planet. It's tilted on its side, which makes it different from most other planets in the solar system. Uranus is an ice giant, meaning that it's mostly made up of gases such as hydrogen, helium, and methane. Methane absorbs red light and reflects blue and green, giving Uranus its distinctive greenish-blue color. Uranus also has a faint ring system that is intermediate in complexity between the more extensive rings of Saturn and the simpler rings of Jupiter, Neptune, and Saturn. Uranus has 13 known rings that are opaque and only a few miles wide. Uranus is about 4 times wider than Earth, but it's only about a third as massive. It's so light that if you removed its rings, it would float in space. Uranus is also very far away from Earth. It takes about 30 years for light to travel from Uranus to Earth. This means that if you were to send a message to Uranus, it would take over 60 years to get a response. Neptune is the farthest planet from the Sun. It's another ice giant, mostly made up of hydrogen, helium, and methane. Methane absorbs red light and reflects blue and green, giving Neptune its distinctive blue color. Neptune also has a faint ring system that is intermediate in complexity between the more extensive rings of Saturn and the simpler rings of Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. Neptune has 14 known rings that are opaque and only a few miles wide. Neptune is about 4 times wider than Earth, but it's only about a third as massive. It's so light that if you removed its rings, it would float in space. Neptune is also very far away from Earth. It takes about 40 years for light to travel from Neptune to Earth. This means that if you were to send a message to Neptune, it would take over 80 years to get a response. And finally, let's talk about Pluto. Pluto is a dwarf planet that was discovered in 1930. It was reclassified as a dwarf planet in 2006 because it meets some but not all of the criteria for a full-fledged planet. Pluto is about half the size of Earth's moon, and it has 5 moons. It's very far away from Earth. It takes about 5 hours for light to travel from Pluto to Earth. This means that if you were to send a message to Pluto, it would take over 10 hours to get a response. Pluto is also very cold. The temperature on Pluto can reach as low as 225 degrees Celsius. It's colder than the coldest place on Earth. So there you have it, a quick tour of our solar system. Each planet is unique and fascinating in its own way. Who knows what other wonders we'll discover in our cosmic backyard. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something new. If you did, please like and share this video. And don't forget to subscribe for more amazing videos about space.